Welcome back to Final Fantasy IX. After Beatrix wrecked us a third time, she's going to join our party temporarily. Hooray!
Oh, does she actually fight with you now? I thought that wasn't until later.
No, that's now, I believe.
Oh, okay. Yeah, you do get to play as her a little bit with Steiner. But yeah, I was gonna say at the end of the last part that I kind of hope that if they re-release or remake Final Fantasy IX in any capacity in the future, they add the option to have Beatrix as an optional party member during the late game, sort of like how Vincent and Yuffie were optional party members, and how Final Fantasy VI had Gogo and Umaru. You know, Final Fantasy doesn't really have optional party members anymore, and it's a shame because, it's kind of rewarding to figure that stuff out.
It's kind of like there's an expectation, I think, for party members to be relevant to the plot nowadays, I think, for some reason. Like, they all have to matter. And,
well, Final Fantasy VII did that well. I mean, yeah, you didn't see them during the ending because the ending was CG, and they obviously couldn't fit like 4 different variants of the ending onto the disc. But Yuffie Kisaragi, not necessarily relevant to the main plot, but she did have her own side story in Wutai that fleshed out the sort of stuff Shinra got up to in the world. And Vincent Valentine was actually the most plot-relevant character in the game.
Wait, how the hell do you make that an optional party member, then?
Because he had a direct connection to what went on with Sephiroth, and his story actually explained quite a big deal, quite a good deal of what happened with Professor Hojo, Sephiroth, and Sephiroth's mother. So it added to the backstory, and that was a good way to flesh out the story. Also a good reward for going out of your way to unlock the cellar door underneath Shinra Mansion. But yeah,
so that's what you get for doing like an extra thing in a dungeon is Vincent. Okay, I just need to play Final Fantasy VII eventually, and then I'll understand what the hell you guys are always talking about.
Well, getting Vincent as early as possible requires you to fight Lost Number as early as possible.
Yeah. Oh, jeez. That boss.
Oh, look at how badass Beatrix... Oh, she falls asleep.
Oh, you actually get to fight with Beatrix and Freya. That's an odd combination. Actually, a really interesting combination, considering...
You're like, I'm sorry I slaughtered your people. Fuck you, okay? Fuck you.
Oh. That was...
And you're sleeping on the job.
She didn't even do anything!
Killed my brothers and sisters.
That was an anticlimactic debut.
Hold on a moment. Beatrix is level 39, which is supposed to show how badass she is. But Ryan here had to go and kill all the Grand Dragons. So...
No, look at how disconnected these levels are, okay? Level 17. Level 36. Level 25.
Someone's using anchor arms.
Now I'm a jerk and everyone loves me.
But you know what? Final Fantasy IX really opened my eyes to something that I didn't even realize I wanted in RPGs at the time, because I played Final Fantasy VIII first, obviously. Every character in this game is different and unique and has their own abilities, and, that sounds like a no-brainer to people who started in earlier Final Fantasy games. But in Final Fantasy VII, and especially VIII, characters are mostly blank slates. As a result of that, I didn't care about half of them as far as it came to battles.
It's a trade-off, because, again, part of the problem is that you can have characters, like in this game, you can have characters who are very unique and different, but then you also get much limited choice because you don't get to choose how their stats branch or what abilities they learn. Well, I guess you've got the equipment system in this
Well,
game, it's the more choice you give players to how their party members level up, the less unique you make them, because at some point everybody's got to learn some of the same stuff.
Well,
because otherwise, like, why give them choice in the first place if you only get to choose one thing?
Well, That's a thing, but 7 and 8, it's more of a glaring thing, because in 7 and 8, you can very freely swap skills between party members, because they're all connected to materia or guardian forces, rather than the characters themselves. And in 8, every character keeps their own stock of spells, but you can swap those spells between party members.
But there are some things some characters are just inherently better at. Some people, like Cloud's always going to be your best physical attack.
I say Final Fantasy VIII specifically because the only really unique thing in Final Fantasy VIII between characters was their weapons and the limit breaks, and that meant Squall was the only one with any kind of combat identity because you were constantly pushing the trigger button whenever he attacked. Everyone else just had a weapon and a limit break that you probably never used. Unless they were Selphie or Squall. The other thing is that in Final Fantasy VII, every character did have their own stat curves. Not so much in 8.
Yeah.
They were just 6 GF repositories, really. And that was where I started RPGs, and I didn't even notice what was lacking there. But once I played Final Fantasy IX, I realized that it was a lot more interesting because I was actually thinking about who I had in my party at what time, and how they all fed into each other's power and worked together.
It's kind of similar to Final Fantasy IV in the sense that you have a rotating cast through most of the game. It's just that in this case, characters come back and leave more often, whereas you had a few instances of that in Final Fantasy IV. Like, I think Edward joined your party twice, Tella joined your party twice, Kain comes and goes, but for a lot of characters were just gone after they came, so I think it's more consistent here, which is both have their benefits, but I think in most games you probably benefit from having a more consistent cast. So
there is that, but it's not as it doesn't hurt as much when you've got something like Bravely Default or Final Fantasy V, or hell, even the Sphere Grid system, the License Grid in Final Fantasy XII, the Crystarium in Final Fantasy XIII. I can't believe I'm complimenting that. Okay, because it's not... Yeah, everyone can eventually be everything in those games, but for most of the game, they're not. For most of the game, unless you're spending a ridiculous amount of time grinding everything, why? For most of the game, you're going to pick a role for a character to have in battle, and maybe a secondary role if you want to be more flexible, and you're going to focus on things that complement those.
And in job class systems especially, it's not like everybody's everything in one battle, because if you're set as a white mage, you're not going to be able to do physical damage. You aren't. So it's not like you could do everything at once in battle all the time.
Yeah, and that's why I think when a Final Fantasy game doesn't have set roles for every character, that's why I think stuff like the job system or set in stone characterization systems, customization systems rather, are more interesting in the long haul than what Final Fantasy VII and VIII did. Because in Final Fantasy VII, you were mostly limited by how much materia you had in your stock at a time. And in Final Fantasy VIII, what you did by the end of the game was you had 3 preset combat roles, and you used the junction exchange system to swap them between whoever you had in your party. And by the end of the game, the only justification for having 6 party members at all was the fact that you split your party off into two parties during the final dungeon to go and fight different bosses and solve puzzles. But even when you switch between parties, you use junction exchange to switch those 3 roles back and forth between the 2 parties.
So you didn't even have to have 6 setups. You had 3 that you kept on flipping
swapping between party members. Yeah.
It makes you wonder what the hell's the goddamn point.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm guessing we get Garnet, Dagger, whoever leveled up in this time frame, right? Like,
yes.
She needs to go kill a few Grand Dragons of her own, essentially.
Oh, that sounds horrible.
Well, I can't do Grand Dragons because Kina's not in the party.
Oh well, we can go find her.
Now,
yeah, we can find her.
What's going to wind up happening now is that Garnet did you see Freya? I don't believe that. She actually did something that I kind of wish the Dragoons would do out in the story, and I don't know if Kane ever did, but she used her jump ability out in the field.
I think
she did that. She did that early in Burmecia when she was jumping up the statue.
I think Kane might like jump into a scene, but it's sprites, so it's harder. Like, you know, I think Dragoons would be the most fun to watch if it were like a movie.
You need to watch the Heavens Ward trailer, okay?
Because like the Dragoon would like jump from building to building, and they'd go all Spider-Man and be cool.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. The Heavens Ward trailer ends with a massive battle against an army of dragons between the Dragoons of Ishgard and, you know, the hordes of Dravania. And it's like an army of Dragoons just flying through the air. And there's this one glorious moment that sticks out in my mind where a Dragoon jump attacks the back of a dragon, bounces off, and the dragon just snaps him out of the air.
By the way, just a little power comparison there. Beatrice whipping out this almighty as fuck holy spell, and Freya just... I can stab things.
Oh, I can stab things too.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that. That's another thing that makes Beatrix interesting from a mechanics perspective. Is she has offensive white magic too. She has holy, which is the most powerful white magic spell, and I think Aiko is the one who gets that later on.
I
believe
really
so.
Used offensive white magic. Like, it's usually like air elemental and holy were the ones that the white mages could use, and it always never did that much damage, so there was no reason to waste that MP.
You play Final Fantasy. It's a pretty good spell in Final Fantasy 4.
I heard actually a story in Final Fantasy 14 of a party of 8 white mages that took down one of the super bosses by just crowding around it and spam casting holy.
That's the ending.
What they called the KKK.
Did you guys ever read 8-Bit Theater? It's a web.
I know what you're talking about.
Okay, well, it's a sprite comic, and I know what you're thinking. It's the one good sprite comic ever made. It's a sprite comic which is basically a retelling of the first Final Fantasy game, and it's hilarious. And basically, the 4 heroes of light, which are Black Mage, Fighter, Red Mage, and Thief, are like incompetent assholes. Fighter isn't an asshole, he's just rock stupid. And at the end of the game, they're like absolutely screwed against Chaos, and it turns out that White Mage and 3 other White Mages end up killing the final boss, because one of the first jokes in the game was, 4 White Mages? It'll never work.
But it does.
Yeah, no, it's one of my favorite webcomics, and you guys should check it out. It's absolutely goddamn hilarious.
Man. Trance in a random battle. Oh god.
It's always such a waste. Like, I'm saving this for bosses.
That's nice. Hey, you stole my order, you prick! That's because I made you a trance early, isn't it?
Yeah, to be honest, Final Fantasy 7 and 8 are the only single-player games that I can think of that had actually a good system for pinch moves.
8... I don't like how... I don't know. The fact that you can constantly, switch characters or just, open and close the menu until you get the limit break just kind of seems iffy or broken to me.
Yeah.
Like it wasn't properly checked.
Yeah, although that does waste actual battle time and lets the enemy wail on you while you're doing it. The only way to really abuse it is to open the disc cover. But the thing about 8 is, if you really want to guarantee yourself a limit break that bad, use the aura spell, because it gives you automatic limit breaks.
Yeah, in that case, it's fine. I liked how 7 incorporated limit breaks.
Yeah.
And to an extent, 10. 10, I think, did a good job, too.
10's meter just built up too damn slowly for me to give a damn, really. It's like they tried to be less ridiculous than 8 could be at times, but they overcompensated.
I think that's what they tried to incorporate, the different methods of building up the overdrive meter, like character attacks or gets hit, does magic spells, and I think that's how they try to mitigate it. But I agree that it still takes a little too long for it to build up completely. But I still like the concept of it.
I like the concept, but in execution, the only efficient way to charge your overdrive in any decent amount of time was to get the Slayer mode, because it only took 5 kills to build your overdrive meter, and it's like, oh god, why couldn't the other modes be this fast?